VOWR800.
Hello and welcome to Going Strong, the program that celebrates Newfoundland and Labrador's unique and vibrant culture. I'm your host, Deborah Collins, and I have the great pleasure of chatting with some of the major contributors to that great culture. Most of those guests are singers, writers, visual artists, actors, and musicians who take center stage to tell their stories and the stories of this place we call home. And for decades, many of those stories played out on our television screens, thanks to several iconic TV shows like Up at Hours, Pigeon Inlet, Step to Stardom, Skipper and Company, and of course the wonderful Grand Band. Local shows which were conceived here, produced here, and starred a host of budding young actors, many of whom would go on to become household names across the country. My guest today played an integral role in them all, but not in front of the cameras. He was director or producer in all of those shows, the man who literally called the shots and whose work helped establish this place as a creative force to be reckoned with. Wayne Guzwell, welcome to Going Strong.
Nice to see you again, Debbie.
It's so good to see you.
After all these years.
I know, we connected, of course, at CBC. And, you know, these shows that I mentioned dominated the CBC airwaves from the 70s to the 90s, really, and represented an enormous body of work that reflected our own culture to ourselves and then to others. The earliest perhaps being Up at Hours, which was a show set in a boarding house in St. John's, cast of characters played by people like Mary Walsh, Kevin Noble, Ray Guy, Gordon Pinsent, to name a few. What was it about a downtown boarding house that made for such great entertainment, do you think?
Oh, it was the characters. It was definitely the characters. We had Ray Guy as one of the characters. He couldn't act, but he was himself on the show, really, and it was wonderful to see what he could do, even though he wasn't an actor. But Kevin Noble was an actor, Mary Walsh was an actor, Janice Spence was an actor, and they knew how to say funny lines and get really humorous laughter, wonderful laughter from the audience at home. So it was a great show to do, and it was Newfoundland. That's what it was. I always said to the people in Toronto, the brass in Toronto, the success to Newfoundland TV is to put Newfoundlanders on television. Because if Newfoundlanders can see other Newfoundlanders on TV, they'll watch. That was the secret of TV in Newfoundland. Just put Newfoundlanders on there. Forget the mainlanders,
And in typical situations, I mean, the boarding house in downtown St. John's years ago was a huge part of the culture, wasn't it?
All the taxis from out over the line stayed at the boarding house, That's where they operated from. If you wanted a package to go to Grand Bank, you brought it to the boarding house, and the taxi took it to Grand Bank for you. So that was the power of the boarding house. So doing a show about the boarding house was just a natural,
And you had a personal connection to the boarding houses, didn't you?
When I was 17, my father had a trucking company, and I used to deliver packages for A.H. Murray and Company to the boarding houses so the taxis could take them around Newfoundland,
Because that was the transportation system.
Oh, that was it.
And if you could catch that taxi before it went out around the bay, then you were doing well. Yeah. And of course, those were the early days of some of those actors, now household names. Was it obvious even then just how incredibly talented they were?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it wasn't work. For me, it wasn't work. It was just play to go do these shows. I mean, the work was upstairs when doing the contracts and doing the money and all this kind of thing. But downstairs, in the TV studio, with the actors, it was play, and I couldn't believe I was being paid to do it,
And you got, paid to watch these creative geniuses really at work, eh?
Yeah, it was amazing to see all these people and how genius they were,
And of course, then there was Skipper and Company, the show you were in, very, very much involved with actors Ray Ballou, the late Ray Ballou as Skipper, and of course his first mate Corky, played by the wonderfully comedic Mac Barfoot, who still a wonderful drummer. And that show ran for an incredible 20 years until 1989. I mean, an extraordinary run. What do you think made it so successful?
Well, it was for children. It starred children. And everything on the show was done for children. The magic was for children. Having Skipper fly out through the Narrows on a flying carpet was for the children, you know. And we starred children. We brought a school in for every show. And they sang songs for Skipper. And it was just a wonderful show for children. And by the way, for the last 3 years, it was on the network. It was all seen all across Canada for the last 3 years.
And it wasn't just great entertainment. It was community television, as you say. You brought the community into the studio.
Yes, we did, yeah. And, I mean, we had buses come from Grand Bank. They would drive in the morning, get up at 6 a.m. to drive in, and then appear on TV, and then drive back again. You know, gee.
Yeah.
All to appear on Skipper and Company. That's how important it was.
Well, it was, and it was reflecting us to ourselves, and
Yes,
I mean,
it
that's
was.
huge. And of course, you were doing special effects before a lot of other people. Tell me about some of those.
We were doing Hollywood quality special effects on Skipper and Company, and the budget for Skipper and Company was $600 a show.
Really?
$600 a show. And we were flying Skipper out through the Narrows on a flying carpet. We had Corky encountering a alien with a spacecraft landing in Bowring Park. An alien came out of the spacecraft and talked to Corky. It was all special effects. Now, how we did it, I really don't know, because we didn't have the equipment to do it. We made the equipment work for us, and somehow, with the help of the technicians and myself, we got these special effects working, and they worked really well. They worked really well.
Well, so creative. I mean, you did what you could with what you had, but there was obviously a lot of creative bones in your bodies, right?
Yeah. We had to get the manuals out to see how to work around some of the equipment to make it happen, you know.
And in the 80s as well, there was a music show called Step to Stardom, which you have called the forerunner of American Idol.
It was 25 years in advance, yeah.
But all Newfoundland talent, so important. And lots of well-known names got their start in that show, didn't they?
Oh, one in particular, that's a favorite story of mine. Gerard McIsaac from Stephenville. He appeared on the show as, I think he was 15 years old. And the judges who I had in Toronto who judged the show for me, they were Karen Kane, you know, prima ballerina, and Norman Campbell, who produced all the ballets for CBC, Yves Cousineau, who was the arts critic for the Globe and Mail, and Mo Kaufman, flautist, you know. And those were the judges I had. And I went up with Gerard McIsaac and I said, now, folks, this guy has never had a dance lesson in his life, but please look at him. And the first minute that they looked at him, they all looked at each other and they said, oh my, what a talent, what a talent. He came second that season, took his scholarship that we gave him, and he moved to Toronto, to the Toronto Dance Theatre. 2 years later, he was starring in Cats on Broadway.
And I got to jump in here because that's our connection with Gerard intersected about 10 years apart. When I was covering the arts for CBC, had heard about this wonderful young dancer from Stephenville, Newfoundland, from a small place not known for dancing at that point when he was growing up. And he was the lead role, really, the star of the show. He was Mr. Mistopheles, the magic cat. And remember, we went up and interviewed him up there. We showed him the tape that you had recorded, his audition, as he sat and watched it. And he got very teary-eyed, you know. But what an amazing thing. And so he got his start there. He was dancing and stealing the show every night in Massey Hall. And I remember interviewing people afterwards, doing streeters with the guests as they came out, you know, the members of the audience. And I would say, which one was your favorite? And almost without, exception, they would say, oh, Mistopheles, the magic cat. And I, being the proud Newfoundlander, would say, do you know he's a Newfoundlander? So amazing. And I mean, he's one of so many. I think you mentioned Marina Piccinini, the flautist.
Piccinini, she went on to become, well, right now, she's rated one of the top 3 flautists in the world. And she got her start on Step to Stardom.
Yeah.
Yep.
Amazing. And so many others that we could name.
Oh,
yes. And, something, I think maybe talking about this music show, it might be time for a song. And Ever the St. John's Boy, you've chosen a song by one of the best Irish tenors to come out of St. John's, the great John White. And his story song about an iconic city landmark, Signal Hill, or as he would say, Signal Hill.
Signal, yeah.
Let's have a listen, and then you can tell me why you like that song and that singer so much.
One night in December I'll never forget, a charming young maiden I happened to met. Her eyes shone like diamonds, she was dressed fit to kill, and I met her down sliding on Signal Hill. Will you come along with me, boys? Come along with me, boys, down Signal Hill. I said, now, my fair one, if you will excuse, to partake of me arms, sure she didn't refuse. But then I must say that I first met love's thrill when I met her down sliding on Signal Hill. Will you come along with me, boys? Come along with me, boys, down Signal Hill. Well, the very next day to the church we did go, which made all the people to the rag, you must know. Says she, will you marry? Says I, faith I will. And his buckle, we were up on Signal Hill. Will you come along with me, boys? Come along with me, boys, down Signal Hill. And now we are married and children have three. Sure, myself and the missus could never agree. We one christened William, the other one Bill. The Garces I call the other one Signal Hill. Will you come along with me, boys? Come along with me, boys. Come along with me, boys, down Signal Hill.
And that was Signal Hill by John White, a favorite of Wayne Guzwell, my guest today. Wayne directed or produced many of the iconic local TV shows we grew up watching here in Newfoundland and Labrador. Wayne, what is it about that song and that singer that resonates with you?
Well, Signal Hill, of course, is a local landmark, and John White is a landmark too, because he's one of the nicest performers I've ever worked with. And back in the 60s, he was a major, major star. Yet nobody would know. You know, he'd walk down Water Street, John, how you doing, John? And everybody would know him. And he was a major star, yet he lived in his little tiny house down on Patrick Street with his mom. He kept care of his mom until she died at 85 or 86, whatever. And that's the type of man he was. He was just a wonderful, wonderful man. And, of course, a great entertainer. And that song, Signal Hill, is just Johnny White, one of his favorite songs, and that's why I chose it, really.
Yeah, in honor of him.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I imagine we could do a whole show on the wonderful Grand Band years. The show that blended Newfoundland humor with some fabulous original music and gave us one of the best bands to ever come out of this place. What was it about that show that still has people talking?
That show, we could put that show on today, and it would be a major success. I don't know why CBC doesn't, to tell you the truth, but it would be, it's timeless, number one. It's Newfoundland humor, number two. It's Newfoundland music, but it was so ahead of its time. We were doing rock videos before rock videos were invented, you know? And we were doing all kinds of special effects. It was a very difficult show for me to do. As a director, it was extremely difficult, but it was the most fun show I've ever done in my life. And the reason it was difficult was because Tommy and Greg had 6 or 7 characters each. And sometimes they appeared all of the characters in the one scene. So 2 actors were playing 12 characters, and I had to shoot that. So I had to use photo doubles. We had to edit completely, all over the place. And to get 3 minutes often took 3 hours, you know? And it was because of the multi-characters that these guys took. But the fact they did all of these characters, it made them look like a family because they were behind each character.
So they resembled each other.
They resembled each other.
All the characters.
So it was believable that they were, Nanny Hines and Mom. That was Tommy, and Dad was Greg, and man. But what a headache to do, and we had trouble too. Often the guys would ad-lib, and sometimes I'd be in there and I'd be laughing and watching the monitor, and suddenly the picture would start swaying back and forth. And I'd say, Graham, he was on the camera. I'd say, Graham, what are you doing? Oh, I'm sorry, I'm laughing. And we'd have to stop and edit because the cameraman was laughing so much that he jiggled the camera, But that was the nature of Wonderful Grand Band. It
Well,
was just
yeah.
a wonderful show to do, but ahead of its time,
Oh, well, it reflected so much, again, about our culture and family dynamics and the culture of radio call-in shows. And what went to air was funny enough, but I can imagine there must have been a lot of shenanigans behind the scenes as well, eh?
You don't know. You don't know. And a lot of times we'd have to cut stuff out because Greg and Tommy tended to write for themselves, not for the audience. And sometimes, being a CBC audience, not everything could be said. So we had to cut sometimes. But
A little judicious editing. Yeah.
But it was a wonderful show to do, I got to say that. And like I said, it could go on air today and be a major hit.
Yeah. And, well, from comedy then to something a little more serious, you did a show about Sir Humphrey Gilbert, a historical docudrama. So briefly tell us about that, and it won a major award.
Okay, that was in 1983, and it was a one-camera film shoot, actually. It was shot on film, believe it or not.
Really?
Yeah. And John Moyse was in it, the famous actor, Flo Patterson, John Holmes, Dick Bueller, Chuck Heriot, David Gillard, John Heriot, Mike Heriot, Jerry Squires was in it.
Really?
Yes, and Doug Seymour and Austin Davis. And that show was shot in England, Ireland, and Newfoundland. And it was done on one camera for a budget of about $250,000.
Really?
And all the travel included in that. And it went on to win the highest award in Canada, the ACTRA Award for Best Television Show of the Year, which is the equivalent of an Emmy Award. We were against some really big competition, like they had budgets of millions of dollars, but our $250,000 show won over those multi-million-dollar productions.
Which just goes to show Newfoundlanders always punching above our weight,
That's it.
you know?
Yep.
Well, when you left CBC in the early 90s, you went on you formed your own production and events company, and you directed a lot of huge events for the provincial government. The reenactment of the Viking arrival at Lansom Meadows, the 100th anniversary of Marconi's first wireless signal, and a massive New Year's Eve concert on the St. John's waterfront to mark the start of the new millennium. And that was quite the event, wasn't it?
There were 100,000 down on the Finger Pier in St. John's Harbour, 100,000 on site. I had 7 satellites hired and a TV crew, and we filmed the whole thing. We did it live, actually, and it went up to the 7 satellites, and it went to 3.5 billion people around the world. And we checked it afterwards that we did have 3.5 billion people watching that show. And the reason is the half-hour difference.
We were the first in North
Millennium
America.
wasn't arriving anywhere else in the world except Newfoundland. And everybody wanted to see that.
And we had a half-hour jump on them.
And CNN took it, ABC, Italian TV, BBC, every station in the world took it, Japanese TV, 3.5 billion watching St. John's, Newfoundland, and St. John's, Newfoundland entertainers, because that's all that we had on there was Newfoundland entertainers. Right?
That's right, yeah. So that half-hour difference working for us for
man.
sure.
And all of the screens in New York City's Times Square all had Newfoundland, my signal up on them, because I made a deal with New York to put them up there.
Wow.
So the captive audience of probably 1 million people in Times Square were watching Newfoundland at that time.
And rightly so.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of the St. John's waterfront, time to hear your second song request, also set around the waterfront, and a song that paints a picture of that part of town like few other songs have, the St. John's Waltz by Ron Hynes. Why that song? Why do you love it?
Ron Hynes, man of 1,000 songs. I worked with him for many years and loved what he did. And this is an iconic song. It needs really no introduction, you know.
Well, let's have a listen.
Oh, the harbor lights are gleaming, and the evening is still and dark, and the seagulls are all dreaming seagull dreams on Amherst Rock, and the mist is slowly drifting as the storefront lights go dim, and the moon is gently lifting the last ship's coming in. All the sailors got a story, some are true and some are false, but they're always wrecked, and they're up on the deck and dancing the St. John's waltz. And we've had our share of history. We've seen nations come and go. We've seen battles raged over land and stage 200 years or more. For glory or for freedom, or for country or for king, or for money or fame, but there are no names on the graves where men lie sleeping. All the 9 to 5 survive the day with a sigh and a dose of salts, and they're parking their cars and packing the bars and dancing the St. John's waltz. Sold on going to sea. All the planes fill the skyway, all the trains run swift and free. So leave the wayward free to wander, leave the restless free to roam. If there's rocks in the bay, if it's old cliche, you'll find your way back home. But don't question or inquire what's been gained, what's been lost. In a world of romance, don't miss out on the chance to be dancing the St. John's waltz.
And that, of course, was Ron Hines with the St. John's Waltz, the song that brings a tear to the eye of every townie who hears it, I think, including me and my guest today, Wayne Guzwell, TV and event producer, and with so many shows to his credit, as we've been talking about. Wayne, when you look back at the body of television shows, the body of your work, you know, the people and places and history and humor and quirkiness and talent that they all showcased, have you ever been able to sum up just how special this place is and how worth recording it for posterity?
Well, it was really well worth recording, but I say was because what bothers me now is that what I did back in the 70s and 80s and early 90s is not being done now. Where do the Greg Malones of today, the Kevin Nobles of today, where do they get their break? We used to give breaks to major performers who, when they were young, and who went on to become major performers. But today, where do you do it? That's what bothers me. So what we did was wonderful. I did 176 shows a season, and it was all Newfoundland talent. They all got to appear on TV in front of Newfoundlanders, and sometimes in front of Canadians, and they were able to make a life out of entertainment. But I'm not sure what you do today, you know?
You had so many experiences and so many productions, as you say. Is there anything that kind of stands out, any memory that still really resonates with you?
Well, I did a lot of live TV, and I enjoy live TV. The more stressful it is, the better I work. You know, I love stress. And doing the Pope's visit to Newfoundland, you know, and talking with him and telling him what to do, basically, you know.
Really,
I got to tell the Pope what to do, you know. I got to tell the Queen what to do as well. So it's a funny thing, the power of being a television producer or director, you know. You can talk to these the highest people in the world, and they'll listen to you and do what you want them to do.
Because you know something that they're not familiar with, yeah.
Because it's an unknown world. Television is an unknown world to most everybody except the people who work in it. So that was interesting that I told prime ministers what to do, premiers what to do. And they listened, and that was wonderful. But working with the performers, working with the musicians, the actors, the children, that's the joy that was in it for me. And bringing a tear to someone's eye at Christmas when I did a Christmas special, that's what was wonderful to me, not the little things. That's what gave me joy, yeah.
Yeah, the special moments.
Special moments, yeah, and they were full. The TV world was full of special moments back in those days,
Well, finally, what do you think keeps our culture going so strong?
I think it's born in us, For example, let's take the Ennis sisters. Nobody taught them how to be the Ennis sisters, They just grew up to be the Ennis sisters. And now they can go anywhere in North America as the Ennis sisters, and people will crowd to the theaters to listen to them. So why is that? Well, it's because it was born in them, The building of TV shows and the directing of TV shows, it was built into me. I was born with it. I didn't learn it. Oh, I walked in CBC and did a TV show. I didn't learn how to do it. I just did it. And that's what it is with musicians and Newfoundlanders in general. They have the music in them. They have the songs in them. And we need to give them something to bring them out. We have to get it out of them. And that's what CBC back in those days was. The vehicle that brought out the talent of all these wonderful Newfoundlanders. Today, I'm not sure how you do it,
And the ability is still there. I think Newfoundlanders have a natural born ability to perform.
Absolutely. They can go anywhere in the world and be major stars. And we've proved it. I mean, Rex Murphy goes up to Toronto and takes over the national news, Bill Goff goes to Hollywood and takes over Hollywood. It's just amazing, the talent of Newfoundlanders and how far we can take that talent around the world.
And how much you did to showcase that talent, Wayne Guzzwell, thank you for being here today and for all the individual hours and segments and series and many years of quality TV viewing that you've given us. And for giving us the gift of us and showing everybody else what they've been missing out on.
Oh, thank you, Debbie.
Good to see you again.
Yeah.
And that is Going Strong for this week. Thanks for joining us. My name is Deborah Collins, inviting you to tune in on Tuesdays at 7:30, right here on VOWR.